Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. I'm really sorry for the mistake with the time that I scheduled the event on the wrong hour. Uh, yeah, we are late for an hour. I'm really, really sorry. Today I'm here alone, so I will be trying to read all your comments myself, both in VR community and YouTube. So please write all your questions. I'll try to address them. Today we will be talking about test-driven development or TDD, a very popular approach nowadays. My name is Danilo Vorotintsev. I'm a senior software engineer here at IPAN. And a few words about the agenda for today's session. We will discuss what is TDD, what are pros and cons of this approach. Then we will have a brief demo of using test-driven development. And then we will discuss when TDD does not work that well. Let's start from the beginning. What is TDD? It stands for test-driven development, and it is an approach in which developers write automated tests before writing the actual code. So it's pretty simple. Why do we need this approach? Actually, it has several benefits. First, I think the most important one is improved code quality. So when you write your tests and then you write your code, you have your code testable because you already have tests that enforce some logic on your code. You have faster feedback loops, so you can much faster see if something works or not. You can fix it, do whatever you need. It increases the confidence in code changes. So if you have a lot of tests and you would like to change some logic, you can just run the unit tests then and see if any of them broke. And finally, TDD allows you to find bugs faster, partially because of the faster feedback loop. That's pretty simple too. Let's return to the TDD cycle. So it's usually called either test code refactor or it's called in colors. So the first stage is like a red phase. You write a new test. This test doesn't pass yet because the code is not implemented. So if you try to run this test, it will fail, and well, usually failed tests are marked red. So that's why this phase is called red. Then you implement the actual code. This phase is called green because, well, after this implementation, if you run your tests, they should be green, so they pass. And finally, you refactor the code if you need it, and if you think that code is great, you can skip this part. Usually, this cycle is kept very, very small, so maybe 1 or 2 minutes long. So you should really fast write a small new test, write a tiny piece of code that allows this test to pass, and then refactor it. So yeah, the point here is not to write a very big test that will take hours to write code for, and just move in very, very small iterations. So let's see how it works in practice. We will try to implement the address book service class using TDD. So yeah, it should be a class that manages address book records, and each record consists of 3 fields: integer ID, which is unique within the system, string name, well, it's name of the person who lives by that address, and string address, like the address of the person. Yeah, real address book would have much more fields, but just to keep it simple, we will have only 3 of them. And we have to implement 4 operations. Add new record, get record by ID, count records that are already in the book, and import records from the file, which is stored in the JSON format. So let's start. I have already created the address record class. It has the 3 required fields, and well, it has getter setters generated with Lombok, just to keep the code concise. And we have the address service class without any methods. So which method should we start with? I would probably start with the get record by ID because registering a new record is very difficult to test without get record by ID. So yeah, let's do it. So we create a test with the default name here. It's okay. And yeah, we first write a very, very simple test. Let's call it get by ID should return null when nothing registered. For this test, we need to initialize our class. It will be private final address service equals new address service. And what do we need? We call service dot get by ID with ID. Oh my god! With ID 1, and we say that it's address record actual, and we assert that this object is null. So if we try to run these tests, obviously it fails because we don't have this method. So yeah, it doesn't compile. Now we finished the first red phase. Now we have to implement the code so this test passes. How can we do it? We create a method get by ID, and we just return null. And these tests will actually pass. We run it. Yeah, okay, so it works. Now we have finished the green phase and we can refactor it. In one of our previous videos, we said that returning null is a very bad practice. So it's usually, well, always, it's better to return optional empty. So I will change it to optional of address records and return optional empty. And I have to change the code here and assert true actual is empty. That's all. And we run the test again. And we shall see, yeah, it passes too. So we finished the first iteration of the TDD approach. Now let's write the second test. It will return the entity that we previously registered. So let's name it should return previously registered address. Registered. Okay, the test naming is not part of this slide talk, so you may dislike how I named the tests, but it's not that important for now. Okay, so what do we need here? We have to create a new record, and let's set ID for it to 1, set name, let it be Danila, and set address Vilnius, Lithuania. Hi from Lithuania to everyone. What do we do next? We have to add this record to our service. Let's call it service.add, and we pass a record here. Okay, then we actually get this record back. It will be record get ID. And we assert true actual is present. So we check that this optional has some value, and assert equals record actual.get. Yeah, on the real project, you may specify some additional messages. They are very useful for the debugging, but to save time, I will not do it today. So yeah, we can skip running this test because obviously it will fail because it does not compile. Let's fix this test. Let's go to the green phase. So we have to add some record and return it. Well, we are supposed to write the minimal code so the test passes. So I will just add one address record, and I will save to this variable. So this record equals record. Yes, this approach allows our system to save only one record at a time, but well, the tests will pass. And yeah, to make it pass, we should say here of nullable record. That's all. So let's run all the tests. Wait a second or two. Yeah, and we see that both tests passed. But yeah, I don't like this approach. It's obviously not a good code. But yeah, I cannot refactor it. I have to change it significantly. So I will create another test that should return two previously registered addresses. And I will have the first record, I will have the second record, and it will be, yeah, with ID 2, a name, it will be my good friend Linus from Vilnius, and we will register both these records, get them both from the service back, and yeah, then we verify that both records were returned to us. Record 2, actual 2. Yeah, I don't like these names. I will rename it, but a bit later. We run this test and we expect it to fail. Yes, and it has failed. We can see where, and yeah, so it returned the wrong value. Well, as expected. Let's go and fix it. We are creating an address book where we are getting records by the ID. So in my opinion, it's a great use case for the map. Map from the integer to the address record. Let's name it address record map, doesn't really matter. And let it be a new hash map. We don't care now about the multi-thread and all that stuff. And yeah, to get the record by ID, we just call it map.get. Okay. And to add the records, we call the map.put records.get ID record. Okay. So I think it should work. Let's run it. Yes, so it passed. And we can go to the refactoring stage. Here, I don't like the duplication of these records, and I would like to extract them. Let's have two methods that return the records, and the first one will be get vanilla records because of the name. We keep the original signature and replace the code's duplicate. And yeah, the second record we will get Linus record. Keep the original signature and bit of refactoring here. And yeah, we have two small methods that just return the records. And let's rename the variables. It will be just Danila. It will be Linus. Yeah, and you can rename these too. I just don't want to waste time here. Okay, so we have implemented the first two operations, and we can move further. Let's count the records. Yes, so we are going to write a new test. Test void should return 0 when nothing registered. No, let's make it size should return 0 when nothing is registered. Okay, yeah, just a bit of off topic. I like these underscore names because it's easy to read that we are testing here method size, and it should return 0. And when should it return 0? Exactly when nothing is registered. Yeah, and we can say count size, let's name it size equals service dot size. and assert equals 0 size. And yeah, here I can go and let me run this test. It will fail, it doesn't compile, okay. I can go and implement this method and just simply return 0 from it. And so then write another test where I register one record and verify that the size is 1. But it takes a lot of time to write the code that you will rewrite in a minute. And sometimes when you are confident in what you're actually writing, you can increase the step that you're taking. So here I will write 2 tests at a time and implement this method without breaking it into several chunks. So size should return 1 when one address is registered. So we call service.add and get Danila record. And we verify that size is 1. And now I can go and implement this method. ID recommends me to just return null, but I will probably return address map.size. And here I can run all the tests and see if they work. Yes, they work. So yeah, just again to repeat, if you're taking very, very small steps with a simple code, it will take you actually more time comparing to if you take bigger steps. So here I created 2 tests and just implemented code that satisfies both of them. In my opinion, it's a good approach. And let's see, the last operation that we have to implement is import records from file stored in JSON. Okay, so it's quite difficult. What test should we write? Should we pass the file and test will read the file? I don't like this approach. So here it's difficult for me to write the test for this requirement. So it really forces me to write a better code because it will be much easier to write a test if I have a separate class. So here I will create a JSON file reader class, and I will write tests for it first. So we create some tests, and first test void should read correct data. And in these tests, we here create this system under test, how it's called, JSON file reader equals new JSON file reader. And here we can here we read some file. Let's keep the name for now, and it will return to us list of address records. Let's import the list, and we have to compare it with some list. I will probably copy these 2 small methods. It's a bad approach because we duplicate the code, but we will fix it a bit later again. And I will read these 2 records from the file. So here, list of address records expected equals list dot of get Danila record, get Linus record. And we assert equals expected and records that we read. So it will fail because it's not implemented. And let's first see what file should we read here. I have a prepared addressbook.json file with these 2 users. And it's usually considered a good practice to have files required for tests somewhere in the tests folder. So here in tests and resources, I will place addressbook.json, and it can change just for the test. So if I place this JSON in the main resources, this file may need to change because some business requirements change. And in our case, we can say, okay, your production file can change, but we, with our test, will stick to this file. So yeah, always put your resources to the test.resources. And we will read the file. Yeah, what is the path for it? It will be source test resources and address book.json. Yeah, this test will fail. Let's create a method. It will return a list of address records and it will accept the file path. Okay, and we have to implement. To read the JSON file, we will use private final object mapper class that I showed to you in the serialization light talk, so you can go and rewatch it if you need. Yeah, so we create an object mapper, and yeah, here we have to read value. It has a lot of overloads, but let's use a new file path. And yeah, here we have to specify new type reference like that. Because yeah, here we have to specify which type we would like to read. And in Java, unfortunately, due to type erasure, we cannot do it like that. But maybe one day we will be able to do it. And yeah, we have to handle exception. Let's surround it with a try catch. And in case of some exception, we will return null for now. Let's go to the test, try to run it. And I hope that I specified. Okay, so it does not work. Yes, it doesn't work because here we have to actually specify a list of address record. So yeah, not always your test will work from the first attempt. Yeah, and here everything passed. Hooray. Do we need to refactor something? Yes, I actually think we do. We have a code duplication. So we have these two methods in both our test classes. I don't like it. And here I will use pattern that is called object mother. Maybe it's not the best pattern, but yeah, I'd like to use it here. And I will create a class called address records mother. And this is utility class that creates data for our test. So it will have public static methods that return some values for tests. And here we can return it and just import static method here, and do the same thing in the address service test. So we remove these two methods and just import from the object mother. Okay, so I don't know what should I refactor more. So let's go on another iteration. What will happen if we have an exception here when we try to read the data? It will return null, and returning null is not the best approach. Okay, so let's write the tests. Yeah, actually, we don't need it, and we don't need this. And should throw exception when data is incorrect. And we will have another file for that, address book, let's say corrupted. And here I will just have some invalid JSON. Yeah, that's all. And in this test, we try to corrupt it. Yeah, we try to read this file and we assert that this code will throw an exception. What exception do we expect? Well, I think unchecked IO exception is okay. And yeah, here we specify the lambda that will be executed. We run these tests, and this test fails because we don't have the exception handling. Okay, let's go and fix it. And in case of IO exception, we throw new unchecked IO exception where we pass the original exception. Okay, we run this code again. Let's run both tests to verify that they work. Yeah, okay, so it works. Good. Let's go and implement the import tests in the service test class. So yeah, void should import data. Let's keep it simple. And here our service, yeah, it will use import data. Here we have to specify the file path, and yeah, I would like to pass here the JSON file reader that will be used to read the file. And we are writing unit tests, so we should not really rely on the behavior of another class. And here it's much better to use so-called mocks, Java JSON file reader. We will mock kita. Yeah, we will mock the JSON file reader dot class. And yeah, you can do it using the annotation mock, but yeah, here I will use it like that. And with this reader, we can specify its behavior. So when the reader import is when reader reads any string. So when we ask this reader to read any file, it will return the list of get Danila records, get Linus record. Okay. We import the data. Here, actually, we don't care about the file path because we mocked it and it will work with actually any string. But yeah, let's do it like that. So everyone sees that it's a fake file path. And yeah, here we would like to execute the same assertions. So we will get both, try to read both records. Yeah, and let's have vanilla, and this will extract as Linus, and that's all. Yeah, and we verify that we can get both of them using their ID, blah, blah, blah. This test, I will not run it, it doesn't compile. And let's go to the green phase, let's implement it. Yeah, so it accepts file path and the JSON reader. And we do JSON reader read file path, we get address records, and then address records for each we import it to the map, put address record dot get ID and address records. Okay, so we read the file and add all the records to our map. We run it. Yes, this test passed. Hooray! Let's refactor it. I don't like that my address service class is tied to the JSON file reader. So I cannot pass here like CSV file reader or whatever. And that's why I will try to extract interface. And yes, it will not work in the presentation mode because I cannot scroll it. Oh my god. Yeah, I will have to code a bit more. We create an interface file reader, and in this interface we will have method read that reads file path. Okay, and here I will specify override. And here in the address service itself, we can accept just a file reader, not the JSON. And yeah, I think that's all with the refactoring. We can actually add more tests for the negative cases. When the reader throws an exception, we expect the service to throw an exception. So we can actually make a few more changes to these codes, but I will leave it like that for now. And yeah, let's return back to the presentation, and I will answer the questions if there are any. Uh, just give me a second. What is the difference between test-driven and behavior-driven development? These are completely different approaches that have like almost the same name. Behavior-driven development is more about working together in a team of a developer, tester, business analysts. In BDD, there is a like language called usually it's used. It's called Gherkin, and it's a language in which tests can be written, and it's not a programming language. So, for example, a business analyst can write a test for you, and you will then write the code that satisfies these tests. So yeah, it's different approaches. What do you think about structuring tests, arrange, run, assert, or given, when, then? Yes, I like it. It's not always easy to do it, but I'm kind of trying to do it here. So like the first part here is given, then when, and then. I don't like the comment here, like given, when, then, but it's depends on that preference. Okay, and yeah, if I stopped the presentation for a bit, I would really ask you press likes if you like the video. It really helps. And yeah, subscribe to the channel, obviously. And yeah, create a temporal file. I think it's about test for the JSON data reader. Yes, we can create temporal files, but we have to populate them somehow. So in some cases, temporal file is a great choice, but in our case, I think putting static files to the test resources is just better. And yeah, if you have any more questions, please post them, maybe in YouTube. I don't see any comments here yet. Okay, let's go further. TDD is a great approach, but does it have any drawbacks? I think yes, and well, it has a bunch of drawbacks. First, learning curve. So it's not that easy to start using TDD comparing to just writing the code. The second problem is difficult to use in legacy applications. So if you have an application that was written like 5 years ago and it's maintained without using TDD, it's really hard to start practicing TDD there. Also, TDD is not really applicable when requirements are not clear. We will see it in a second. It requires everyone to follow TDD, because if you're the only person who follows it, well, it's not real TDD. And it's time consuming, especially if you make short iterations. You write a very small test, you write a very small piece of code that satisfies these tests. It may be really time consuming. And let's see an example of a case when the TDD doesn't work that well. Let's imagine that we get another requirement. So instead of importing records from the JSON file, we have to import records from the Google account of our users. Okay, so how do I write a test for it? I just don't know where to start. I can write an assert for it. If I get a task like that, I just like to go to Google and let's say Google, it's called, I think, People API. We can search it. Yeah, and here we have People API. So we can see that, oh my God, it's not that one. We can see how to yeah, which requests to send to get some contacts. We can see somewhere examples with Java SDK. So it's not that easy. Then you have to nail authentication, and it will be using auth2. And yeah, when I get tasks like that, personally, I prefer to just play around with the code. So import the Google SDK to the some maybe test project, generate the secrets, and try to play it. Try to get my own contacts, and then cover these codes with the test. So yeah, in my opinion, it's not a place where you can use the TDD. And in the real projects, from my experience, there are a lot of tasks like that where you cannot just simply write the tests from the scratch. But there is one type of tasks where TDD is really great, and this type of tasks is bugs. So let's see. For example, we are developers and we get a bug report. And we get steps to reproduce. Create a new address record and set its ID to null. Try to add this record to the service. And we expect an exception to be thrown, but actually nothing happens. So the data is added. And when we get a bug report like that, what should we do first? Yeah, first we should reproduce it, see if it is actually a bug, or maybe QA tester screwed something up and, well, the code actually works, or maybe it's not a bug, it's an expected behavior. So yeah, first we should reproduce it. Let's go to the address service tests, and we will try to write the test. Should throw exception when adding record with null ID. And we get address record equals get vanilla record, set ID to null, and we assert throws. We probably expect, let's say, illegal argument exception. Doesn't really matter. On the real project, it probably should be your custom exception. And we expect this exception to be thrown when we add the record to the service. So we write this test, we run it, and what do we see? It fails. We can read why. Yeah, expected exception to be thrown, but nothing was thrown. So yeah, here we reproduced the bug. We can confirm that it is the bug, and we can go and fix it. And how will we fix it? Let's do it simple. If record.getID equals null, then throw new illegal argument exception. ID cannot be null. And yeah, here just a bit of off topic from my previous project's solution architect. It's better to write in logs cannot instead of just can't, because of this tick. It's more difficult to search for it in logs than for cannot. So yeah, I prefer to write it like that. And now we can run this code again and see, will it work? Yes, so the exception was thrown, the bug was fixed, and we did a great job. So yeah, obviously not all bugs suit for TDD. Sometimes bugs only happen when there is one service that sends a request to another service, and then they send the third request, and you cannot just reproduce it within the unit tests, but in cases like that, TDD is literally great, in my opinion. And yeah, let's return back. Uh, oh yeah, I forgot. Before proceeding, we will have like 15 seconds of the commercial. I just would like to remind you that we have a great Java school that covers everything from writing the main methods and up to cloud, CI/CD, modern frameworks. So if you would like to study Java, just go to mjc.school and enroll. It's totally free from the first to the last stage. Okay, and yeah, here is my personal opinion about TDD. I know that there are a lot of arguments about that. So some people very much like TDD, some people don't use it. And here is my opinion. I don't use TDD when first 2 points are pretty simple, when the task doesn't have testable code and when the tasks are not about Java. The first point, example for the first point is, let's say you have to write new configuration for your Spring service. Configuration is usually not tested, so you don't write tests for this. Why would you use TDD? And for the second part, when I have a task not about Java, why would I write tests? So for example, when I have to update the Docker file or the Gradle build scripts and so on, I don't use TDDs. So it's simple. Is TDD only for Java? No, it's for all programming languages that have some testing frameworks. So for all good languages, Java, JavaScript, Python, C#, PHP. Yeah. I don't use TDD in spikes. Spikes are special kinds of tasks where you don't have to write some code, but you have to investigate, is it possible to write this code? So probably my example with the Google API, it's a good example of spike. So like, well, on our project, we would like to connect to the Google API. Can we do it? It will be a spike, and well, I don't use TDD there. And when the requirements or implementation are not clear, when it's useful for me to play around with code, see which one will be more beautiful, and yeah. And I try to use TDD in all other cases, and especially in, oh my god, in tests. Why did I write it? Especially in bugs, when the bug is small and it can be covered within one unit test. So yeah, now I will answer questions if any of them appeared. So yeah, I see only one question. Can you use TDD with Bash? I think yes, but do you really need to? If you write Bash scripts that send some request, you have to mock it. Well, I think it will be very difficult, and I would really try to avoid it. But I think it's a great question. I will definitely Google testing framework for the Bash. Okay, I don't see any more questions. Then thanks, guys, for joining me today. I hope it was useful for you, and see you the next week. Thank you. Bye.